Hi everyone, Will Critchlow here again, founder and CEO at SearchPilot, and I am very excited today to be joined by my good friend Mike King, founder and CEO at iPullRank, who is, I think, the best guest to talk about the kinds of things that I want to get into this time around. We are going to be talking all things AI, obviously, but also a little bit of the through line to what like forward-looking SEO has always looked like. And Mike is, in my opinion, the foremost SEO thinker on how the systems underpinning what we do actually work. And that's led iPullRank's work to be doing a lot of the stuff that we're now talking about. They've been doing for a while. So that's where I kind of wanted to start, Mike. Firstly, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate you
Thanks for
making the
having
time.
me, and thanks for saying
Um,
such
so
nice things.
yeah, anytime. Yeah, as I said, there's a kind of an irony, I think, to the fact that you've been vocal about the SEO industry's need to embrace the change that's
hmm
coming. I mean, has come, but it is also coming. But your work, your work personally, and your team's work has always pushed the boundaries of what SEO has meant. And I think you've been doing some of the stuff since before it was cool, right? since before the AI tools made everybody think that way. So I'm particularly interested in like the recent evolution. What has changed most in your work compared to say 3 or 4 years ago?
What has changed most is that you got to think more about like a content ecosystem, and it's not just about the pages on your site. So we are doing more omni-media content strategy where we're saying like, okay, here's how you need to incorporate video. Here's how you need to be thinking about, Reddit, things like that. And I liken it to basically running SEO like it's reputation management rather than how it has been classic
Mm,
of SEO. Because with reputation management, you are always trying to get multiple positions for a given keyword. But it's more expanded than that now because of Query Fanout, where it's like you need multiple positions for multiple keywords across a variety of different formats and channels. But again, it is kind of similar to reputation management because you are thinking across not just your own media properties, but also your shared and earned properties too.
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, the reputation management game was always a funny one. And I think one of the most challenging bits, thinking back to past eras of work, was the kind of the keyword research that went around that, because
hmm
often you were talking pretty low volume queries, but they were so influential because if somebody did that query and found that old customer service issue or whatever it might have been, it had huge conversion rate impacts. And I think we're seeing the modern version of that now. You mentioned query fan out there. I've been seeing a lot of misconceptions about what query fan out is, and
hmm
even folks thinking that it kind of means that the large language model is going to take your prompt and do that search on a search engine. That was a
hmm
misconception I saw earlier today. Can you, as I say, you've done a lot of the theoretical under research and reading about how this stuff works. How are these fan out queries like? How do they come up with them? And is there anything we can do to kind of know more about how they work?
Yeah, so Google does it in a variety of ways, and of course, ChatGPT does it in a slightly different way. But one of the ways that Google does it is by looking at other queries that similar users are also searching for. They're also, projecting whatever the query the user put in into multi-dimensional space and seeing like, okay, what else is related. They also do speculative extrapolations from it. So there's a variety of ways that they're doing it, but the whole point is that they're coming up with anywhere from like 10 to 20 to 40 queries that we're talking about within like the deep research side of Gemini and things like that. It could be even more than 40. Like I'm sure when you've done something on Gemini, it'll be like, oh, it looked at 400 sources and it ran 50 queries. So the numbers vary, but for AI overview specifically, they try to keep it between 5 and 10. And what they're doing is they're not just extrapolating from like the core query, they're also like figuring out, okay, what is it the user is implicitly asking for based on this query? And then what are the things that they're explicitly asking for based on this query? So then there's going to be a whole list that they then whittle down to like, okay, what is actually going to be valuable here? And then they kind of figure out based on this subquery, what sort of content do we need for it? So in some cases it might need a video. In some cases it may just be looking for like a listicle. They're aligning that. They call that concept routing. And so as far as like what we can do, the way I look at it is it's like a raffle, right? And you want to have as many raffle tickets as possible because once it goes into the actual synthesis pipeline, you have no control. But if they keep seeing your message and your stuff over and over and over, you have more opportunity for you to be a part of that final response. So the way I look at it is really like, how can we identify as many of these queries as possible? And then how do we rank for as many of them as possible as well, aligning with the type of content that they're looking for it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes, I love the raffle analogy. That's I might steal that one and use that. So the you started answering with Google there and talked about ChatGPT as well. One of the things that I felt, and I'm really interested in your take on this because we haven't talked about this in advance, is I I'm quite bullish on Google right
Mm-hmm.
now, and in particular for two reasons. One is the underlying technological reason, right? That inventing the TPU, the having early versions of a lot of this stuff. The attention is all you need. Like there's the
Yep.
kind of Bell Labs kind of argument for Google, but there's
Yep.
the bigger one, in my opinion, is the way it meshes with the strengths that they really have in their core business. And
Mm-hmm.
there is an open question around paid search, and maybe we'll get to that from a business model perspective. But when you think about the usage of their services and the services where they have built out, the huge lead they've done over the last 25 years, the it strikes me that the strengths in core search, so their crawling and indexing infrastructure, spam classification in particular, quality
Mm-hmm.
assessment scores, and just the fact that they run a search index, and so they can
Mm-hmm.
very cheaply, very quickly, and very easily run those dozens of queries against their native infrastructure.
Yep.
I think that's going to be really powerful, even before you get to the distribution thing of people who used to go to Google and typing in a search query. What's your view? Anything you disagree with there, or like, do you have a different take?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I've been saying that I think Google's going to win this, for a variety of reasons. I think the points you bring up are very valuable as well. The main reasons that I've been saying are one, they have their own chips and they've had them forever, and they're talking about like
Mm-hmm.
sending them to space so they can,
I
capitalize
love
on the
that.
power of the sun, like all that sort of stuff. And then there's just the fact that like Google has several multi-billion user products, and so they're gonna learn a lot faster. There's the inertia of users already being in those platforms, so they're going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, I'm just going to use the generative AI here because it's right here. I don't have to split. I don't have to switch to ChatGPT." And then as Google rolls out this whole personal context thing where they're pulling data from across the entire Google ecosystem. Yes, I understand that ChatGPT has memory and so on, but it doesn't have your 25 years of Gmail history, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is just that Google has more search data than anyone. And I know that they just lost this, antitrust trial, and one of the remedies is that they have to give the data to everyone. But we all know that that's going to be in appeals for a number of years, and by the time it
Yeah.
does have to get released, it may be a different type of data that they're using entirely because of how much everything is changing. So I think those advantages, coupled with everything you just said, gives them such a head start, and also to the point of having the people that built it, like they spent billions of dollars to get Noam Shazir back, who was like one of the primary people that was a part of the Transformer paper. So
Mm-hmm.
Google is they can kind of just sit around and watch everyone else's innovations, watch everyone else run out of money, and then throw all that stuff into Gemini or whatever, and they're just going to ultimately win this. So
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT is doing some really smart things, and just the fact that they haven't been beholden by the same things that Google has had has allowed them to innovate differently and quicker. But I think they have a first movers advantage. I don't think they have like the big infrastructure that they need to beat Google at this game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, Altman is clearly a generational talent in fundraising, and the fact that they haven't run out of money is somehow spectacular when you see the deals they're signing. And yeah, like there's some rap songs going to be written about that, no doubt. You should probably do that. But yeah, I think everything you said there, all the distribution stuff is huge. And yeah, I saw a funny thing on social the other day of somebody had prepared an apology note to Sundar. It was like every time the earnings come out, you have to, if you've been saying bad things about Google, you've got to write the apology note. And
Yeah, they just had their first
that made me
$100
laugh.
billion quarter. Crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, anyway, so let's move off that. It seems like we agree too much. That we got to keep moving to find the points of disagreement. And so another one that I know that we come from a similar perspective on, but you've been a leader on, and I've been very interested in where the whole industry goes, is what we call this damn thing, right? So GEO, AIO, LLM, SEO. I have rode in behind on the GEO thing, but you've, I think, kind of led that as a not so much that you think it's the right answer, but you think your view, as I understand it, is this is what the senior folks at clients are calling it. Is that a fair paraphrase, or the media? Like, what do you think is leading it?
Yeah, I'm saying the market is calling it that, right? And to some degree, I am kind of one of the reasons why it was called this, because I was like one of the first people to find that paper and share it with the
Yep.
community. And people were like, "Yeah, what do we call this?" I'm like, "Well, the paper says GEO." And anyway, I think the problem is that the SEO community spent the last year and a half infighting about what it was called rather than defining what it should be called. And going out to people who are spending, billions of dollars on AI and saying like, "Oh, it's just SEO," isn't going to get you anywhere, right? Like so many organizations have been coming to us being like, "Hey, my SEO agency doesn't get it. Clearly, you guys are on the forefront of this thing." And I don't even know that they're necessarily right about their SEO agency not getting it. It's just that they probably said it's just SEO, and that kind of got them laughed out the room. So
Mm.
I think, end of the day, it doesn't matter what it's called, but I think we missed out on the opportunity to define what it's called.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I also actually think there's something exciting about the dynamism, the fact that there are those new conversations going on, and
Hmm.
even if the ultimate education is, that the tactics or the actions are not wildly different, the fact that it's shaped in that new conversation, it's bringing people into that conversation in a way that has been missing.
So that argument makes no sense to me. What I mean by that is people being like, "Oh, well, the tactics are the same. It must be the same thing." Here's a couple examples, right? Think about cold outreach for sales, link building, and digital PR. The tactics are the same for all three of those things, but they're clearly three different things. They're different value exchanges.
Different
Same thing is
disciplines,
happening
yeah.
here. Same thing is happening
Hmm.
here, right? Like there's a different value exchange because these platforms are more branding channels. So even if the tactics are exactly the same, which they are not, it wouldn't even matter because it is a different channel that operates in a different way. And people are, or businesses are treating it differently. Or here's another example, right? Think about social media marketing. There is no difference between social media marketing and content strategy. It's just channel specific content strategy. But we gave it a name, we gave it a line item, we gave it its own subset of tooling, and we've considered it
A
more
team
sexy.
sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Hmm.
right? So if like we are limiting ourselves by saying this is just SEO. We are limiting ourselves to a frame that people don't respect. Like people don't think SEO is valuable because the people that started it said it's free traffic, and then there's the whole reputation problem of SEO that comes with this as well. And there's no like standards for SEO, right? Like this is an opportunity, like you said, the dynamic environment that this is. We can say, okay, well, yes, it is similar to SEO, but we have this opportunity to define the frame in which we operate with this. So again, we're shooting ourselves in the foot in a space where people are investing trillions of dollars to try to keep it like something that people spend $5,000 a month on. Makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah. I really like the point about even if the tactics were the same, the channel is different. And there's something related that I've been saying a lot related to our work, right? So when we're running experiments, and we're now running obviously GEO A/B testing experiments that are analogous to SEO test experiments, and I got some pushback. I don't know, LinkedIn somewhere. Somebody was like, it's the same. It's the same test." And I was like, even when the change on the website is the same,
Mm-hmm.
even if the hypothesis is the same, right? That I don't know, the addition of this kind of language into the page is going to make a difference in these kinds of ways. We're still expecting that over time we're going to find some cases where it's positive for traditional 10 blue links SEO
Yes.
and negative for GEO, large language model referrals, or vice versa. And that doesn't mean that you can say that that one thing was SEO or not GEO, or GEO and not SEO, but it does mean that there is a trade-off, and that there is some element of figuring out, well, okay, with all of that information, with this multi-metrics kind of world, do we want to make this change to our website or not? And that is a
Right.
different question to a pure SEO question.
Right. And what you're describing is happening right now, right? So as an example, you know, we've all seen the tests where if you remove the meta description entirely from a page and then Google just rewrites it, you get a higher CTR and all the downstream metrics as well. But if you do that on the ChatGPT side or for ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT actually responds very well to meta descriptions that kind of like spoil the answer on the page. So classically for SEO, you'd be like, hey, let's just get rid of all meta descriptions. But for ChatGPT, you might want to keep them and make them better. So like it's the sort of thing where I agree that we do need to be testing heavily and understanding that there are nuances of difference that impact each channel differently.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Interesting stuff. It's exciting. As I said, I think for many of us, it's what the change and the dynamic nature of the industry is what's kept us engaged for as long as it has. And this is another exciting round of that, as I bring up regularly when this kind of thing, when we're talking about change, is something that Marshall Simmons said to me probably 2 decades ago. Was that the change is the job security, the fact that if this thing was fixed and solved, then there would be no more work to do. And thankfully,
Yeah,
that isn't the case, and is not looking like it's going to be the case.
absolutely. I mean, search is not a solved problem. SEO is not a solved problem. LLMs are not a solved problem. Like there are so many. I mean, just go back to search, right? Like, there's so many semantic gaps on the internet. There's so many things that are not like as easy to retrieve as you would expect. And, people just have these expectations that everything just works, perfectly, and it doesn't.
Mm.
So there was a time I would say, like the 5 years before ChatGPT came out, where things were kind of boring. Like the algorithm updates were like pretty predictable. There weren't really any huge ones for a while, and
You
it's
can
kind
tell
of a
because they're all
struggle
just
to.
called core update.
Yeah, and it was like a struggle to like come up with something interesting to talk about year over year, which was kind of why I got so deep into IR, and I was like, okay, well, how does this stuff actually work? And then it's just been an explosion for the last like 2, 3 years. So yes, it's 100% job security. It's very interesting. It's just really challenging for me to watch how our industry is ingesting this information and then keeping towards this idea of like, oh yeah, nothing has changed. Like, what are you talking about? Are we working on the same internet? And also, here's the thing. Even if, again, going back to the tactics, even if all the tactics are the same right now, they will not be very soon. There's so many of these different like integrations with different tools that are happening. Like one of the ones I've been showing recently is Zillow. They have a direct integration with ChatGPT. So when you do something that's like a home search in
Yeah.
ChatGPT, it will show you Zillow data directly. So any of those other sites, they're like, well, what are we going to do? Like, it's Zillow now, right? And then they're doing something similar with, Google and Gemini. And so when you talk to Gemini about home search, there's a very clear bias towards Zillow. They're still like, referencing like, Redfin and Realtor.com and things like that. But it's very clear. It's like, oh, thought through this looking at Zillow, like when you go through the chain of thought. So it's like, all right, well, just doing your standard technical SEO or content optimization tactics don't change that. That's more about like, okay, cool. How do we develop an application that can be consumed by this system or do some sort of direct integration? And then how do we make it so ours is exposing the data in such a way that it surfaces above Zillow in that instance? Because I don't imagine that Google's just going to be like, oh, okay, we're only going to do Zillow this way. They're going to be like, okay, here's the open protocol where a lot of people can play with it. Or like the agentic commerce protocol. I think a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, let me just slap my Google shopping feed into that. No, it's like, one, Google Shopping is numerous feeds. And two, ChatGPT isn't expecting that there's parity between what's on your website and what's in this feed. So the feed is effectively content now. And so you need to have a different approach. And that's what I'm saying. Like, as this stuff continues to evolve, it's going to evolve well beyond what SEO ever was.
Yeah, yeah. Which, as we said, exciting. So the one thing that ties that together, actually, the agentic piece is interesting. So what you kindly had me out in New York City earlier in the year for your show, which was phenomenal, and I had a really good time. One of the memorable talks that I attended at that show was the from the Profound
Mm-hmm.
founder,
James. Yeah.
who I found it like the right kind of thought provoking and a little bit. I wanted to argue a little bit. Obviously, he's on stage, so I don't get to argue.
Mm-hmm.
But he had this line where he said, I'm paraphrasing, I forget the exact words he used, but he basically said, we're moving from a world of many customers to a world of one customer, which was
Mm-hmm.
the agent, right? So
Yep.
his line was that, rather than humans coming in and buying from you, it's going to be the agent. And the kind of thing that I'd love to get him in a corridor and after the show and didn't get a chance to quiz him on is my view is that I have a slightly different view of that, is that everyone's agent is going to be at least as individual as they are, maybe more so, because the agent is going to know all of your history, all your preferences, all that kind of stuff in a way that you don't necessarily express that stuff in the long tail of search queries, right? My
Mm-hmm.
query might look the same as your query, but actually our history, our background, every other bit of context, if you could pile all of that into the query, which would be
Mm-hmm.
how the agent would think, then actually our agents might act more differently to one another than even you and I might in real life. And so I was kind of curious where you fell on that, because I know you spent a ton of time with the Profound team, and think highly of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when he was giving that talk, I was, somewhat uncomfortable too, because I'm like, you're like
And I like
driving
that.
further
For the
than
record,
we.
it's good that he's provoking us to
Yeah,
really
for
think about
sure, for
stuff.
sure. Like, I thought it was great that he did it, but I was like, my knee jerk reaction was like, is it this big of a change? But he is right. I completely agree with him at this point after thinking more about it and, doing the research myself. Um, and, you know, I, you're effectively talking about how do we target an audience of one? because that's what it's going to be moving forward. And at the end of the day, like the sources are still going to be the internet. It's going to be what's out there. It's not going to like suddenly invent sources because I need this specific thing, but it's just going to be a much stronger like filtering mechanism that is looking for the more specific thing. So I think what's going to happen is the evolution of content marketing is going to be hyper specific versions of content. And I think the difficulty with that is it's going to yield a lot of like near duplication across the web,
Mm,
because like, okay, I want to target a person that lives in New York City and downtown Brooklyn that's looking for such and such a thing, and the answer is not actually much different for me
right.
versus someone else. But people are going to start targeting in that very specific way. But I also wonder if we're going to get into a space, and I think Jono talked about this a few years back. I want to say like 5, 6 years ago, where he talked about the web was just going to become a series of like centralized sources of information that
Mm,
you're going to have different like presentation layers for. So think of it as like everybody's data for your website is just an API or MCP server or whatever it is, and then your website front end consumes it in a certain way. These agents consume it in a certain way, and so on and so forth. And then if there's like this direct consumption of everything, there may be like these attributes that you just add to it, and then those attributes are how uh kind of like informs the selection. Effectively, it's like the idea of meta tags all over again, but
right,
at
right.
like a data layer perspective, so that these agents can find things that are hyper specific very quickly. But yeah, I
Which
think I
actually,
think exact, huh?
sorry, I was just going to say that actually ties to the point you were making about the agentic commerce and the duplication and the feeds point. Because one of the things I've been really interested in, a little rabbit hole I've gone down recently, is how to think differently about canonicalization on the web versus in a product feed. Because a Google Shopping feed typically lists all the variations, right? All the sizes, colors, whatever else. And so those are not canonical URLs typically.
Mhm.
And I think there's something really interesting about having the kind of, yeah, that machine readable layer be much more highly duplicated with signposts of how to navigate it. These all ladder up to this one canonical product or this one canonical web page. Yeah, like there's pockets of this already existing, I think.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is like if everything is served from the data layer, then it doesn't necessarily matter how duplicated it is, because like you're saying, if
Mm,
there's signposts, it just goes directly to the thing that it needs, and it doesn't matter like, okay, we don't want to index a million versions of this. Well, we don't have to. We just have all the combinations of data, and then there is only the canonical version, basically, right?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, because ultimately, like that is ultimately what we do when we do like programmatic SEO. We take the data layer and then we, extrapolate upon it into millions of versions of pages. So I think it would be, more efficient anyway for us to go backwards to just like providing the data layer directly, and then the agents make the decisions that it needs to on behalf of that user.
Which actually does tie us back full circle to the capabilities of, for example, Google, because that world needs a ton better spam filtering and quality detection. Because as soon as one of the big benefit of a website is the human is seeing the same thing as the machine,
Hmm.
and obviously cloaking discussions to one side, that as soon as that's not true, as soon as there's a feed that is feeding the machine, you're going to need some kind of quality guardrail in that process to make sure that you're not just feeding the machine slop.
Yeah, and there is no indication that ChatGPT is like thinking about that at all. Like they just take
That's
whatever
a,
you
a
give it.
charitable, yeah, a charitable way of putting that. I think uh it is quite clear from their broader behavior, never mind the kind of product discovery or search piece, that they don't think in a very adversarial way. Full stop. They may be adversarial against their competitors, but against their
Mhm.
users, they classically, they'll put everything out, whether it's Sora, whether it's I mean, the original Chat GPT, they'll kind of put it out there and go, oh, huh, some people have used our things for bad things. We did not think that would happen. And to a degree, there's an element of like growth hacking in that and like viral loops and whatever else. But I think there is also a genuine reality that they haven't been living the adversarial life that Google has been living for decades now.
Yeah, and like you alluded to the idea of cloaking. I mean, there's no guidelines for ChatGPT, so like cloaking isn't like it's not inherently a bad thing. But again,
Nope.
with the agentic commerce protocol, they're saying like we don't care what's on your website, just give us whatever you think we need. So it's kind of like they would prefer you serve them the thing for the bot. And we're seeing a lot of people start to embrace that, the idea of quote unquote double serving or whatever. And most people that I see doing it, they're just serving a markdown version of their existing website. But I suspect there are people in the wild out there that are like, cool, let's inject more words here so that we
Mm-hmm.
have a better opportunity to get visibility and what have you. And again, it's not against their guidelines, so sure, if you want to do it, go for it. But I
It's
suspect at
a new
some
Wild
point,
West. Yeah.
yeah, I suspect at some point, OpenAI is going to have to be like, hey, we need to put some more safeguards in here, and then there
Mm-hmm.
will eventually be guidelines and what have you, because like search engines didn't start with guidelines either, and after a while they had to be like, hey, we got to do something because otherwise people are polluting our indexes.
Yep, yep. And then user experience suffers, and of course that's the gold standard. That's the big reason in
Yeah.
there. So coming back to the profound connection, there was another bit that I wanted to check in with you about, which is I know that you've spoken with their team a bunch. I'm really fascinated by well, a couple of things on the business side. Obviously, they've really nailed this. Like, this is a new paradigm. We're leaning into it. We're raising big money. We're telling some big story. They obviously have a vision much bigger than rank tracking for AI search, right?
Hmm.
And when you think about the valuations they're raising at and the money that's pouring into that space from an investor standpoint, and what that implies about the market size of the tooling market for this new world compared to the tooling market for the SEO world, for example,
Hmm.
they obviously have this big vision. What what? I mean, again, not asking you to put words in their mouth, but I know that you've been kind of closely chatting to them about how they build their data, the impressive nature of how they figure out the synthetic queries or the however they do it. I don't know if that's their language. What's exciting you about what's going on in the tooling space when it comes to GEO?
Yeah, I really like the Profound team. Because they ship incredibly fast. Like we have a shared Slack channel with them, and I'll be like, "Hey guys, why doesn't it do this?" or "This isn't working," and a day or two later, they will have shipped a change or whatever. So I really appreciate them. They have big ideas, like you're saying, and I think this space in general, not just Profound, is a good reset because it's not beholden to a bunch of the silly things that SEO software still has in it, right? Like there's still tools that are telling me about text to code ratios. There's still tools that are like, saying everything is on fire that isn't a meaningful thing anymore. And most SEO tools are still like fully lexical, not thinking about semantic at all. Whereas this whole tool space is like using state of the art technology. And I think because they're all like kind of copying each other really closely right now, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of inherently establishing like a technical standard as well. So it's fascinating to watch, like our overlapping space do things the right way and also get the right attention. Like there's not that many SEO tools that get the the love of like, tech crunch and things like that. I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is like, Spotify when they first came out or whatever.
Hmm.
So the fact that these folks are like nurturing the right set of attention um, makes me feel good about the future of that space. And also, a lot of the people that are coming and building this software are people who like have done it at some of the bigger tech firms and things like that. So again, they're not coming to it from like the SEO perspective. In fact, when I first met James over at Profound, I reached out to him because I saw some of the things that they were saying in the press, and I was like, "Yo, like, can we just talk?" Because I don't think the framing that you're going with here is gonna help you because like they're very clearly in the beginning being like, yeah, so SEO is dead and
Right.
where what's next, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, yo, there's a whole community of people here that you're kind of gonna want to like get on board with this message. And I'm not saying I'm the only one that like changed his mind, but like I think my feedback and perhaps other folks that he had spoken to as well help them like get clearer on what it is that they want to put in the marketplace. But yeah, in answer to your question, I just really think that we're seeing what the SEO software community should be doing by looking at what those folks are doing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's going to be very exciting to see. I think hopefully there's more data transparency coming from the tools as well, because at the moment we're missing the equivalents of Search Console and all the rest of it. And
Yeah.
just like with Webmaster Guidelines, there's none of those things were there at the beginning of search either. So in the future, that stuff's going to be a lot of fun. Very conscious that you'd be very generous with your time. Final question. Different different little pivot. You're an artist, right? You're a musician, and we've been talking very much here from the business side and how
Yep.
folks are, um, you know, doing e-commerce and those kinds of things in this world. How are you thinking about it as an artist? How are you thinking about how your work is used? How are you thinking about how you want to use these tools in your work? And can an LLM rap, or like when will it be able to?
Yo, it's actually getting really good. So when
Scary good, I expect.
ChatGPT first came out, I was like, I just like play with it and be like, okay, here's a rhyme. Like, do you understand the technical patterns that are happening here? And they'll be like, yeah, of
Hmm.
course I do. And then I'll say, oh, cool. Well, you do a version of it, and it couldn't do multi-syllable rhyming like at all. Now it's actually really good at doing any like technical rapping thing. And of course, like it can be pretty creative in its imagery and things like that. So what I've been using it for is I'll write a rhyme myself, of course, and then I'll be like, grade
Hmm.
this rhyme, like what is good about it and what is not good about it, and then it's just like a way to get like the direct feedback. But in answer to your question, I mean, I look at it as like a tool, like anything else, right? Like I think a lot of people are fearful that all this stuff is going to go to computers and then no one's going to want to hire artists and what have you. Sure, that's possible, but there's still like flavor that a human adds to art that I have not seen these tools, master. And it's for music specifically, every time there's been some sort of like technological update, there's always that initial pushback from the people that have been using what was before it. So as an example,
Hmm.
historically in production of hip hop, there are these machines, these like physical machines that people use, like the MPC 2000, the ASR 10, like all these different, legendary machines. And then once production software came out, there's this huge pushback in the hip hop community, like, oh, you're not a real producer if you use this
Hmm.
software. And it wasn't until there's a guy named Knife Wonder. He's done beats for like Jay Z and Beyonce and all these sorts of people. it wasn't until he came out that people started to like embrace the idea of using this software. So I think it's going to be the same thing with AI. You know, there's a lot of like people being like, "Oh, well, if you use AI to make a cover, like the cover art, we're not going to listen to your album and things like that." Over time, it's just going to be inevitable, right? Like you're
Yeah.
seeing all sorts of weird things happening right now, where people like Timbaland have been making beats with something called Suno, and it's like
Hmm.
it's inadvertently copied someone else's beats, and then that person found out, and there's been this whole like thing about it. And then also Timbaland invented a digital artist with AI, released a record, a lot of pushback on that. Some of these things are extreme. Like, yes, I don't need a fake rapper that's made from AI. But the idea of being able to like generate your own music so you don't have to sample other people's records is really powerful. And I think that that's going to be the sort of usage for people in my space that's like going to scale, right? So it's just another tool, and people are going to figure out how to use
Yeah.
it right. Some people are going to use it to exploit people, but I think for the most part, people are going to use it in cool ways.
I mean, I feel like we can apply that to the whole conversation of everything we've talked about here, applying to our industries. That's a good full circle place to end. Thank you for your time, Mike, and your expertise. Where should folks follow you for more information and if they want to get all your insights?
AppleRank.com is where everything lives, and then I'm at AppleRank on everything that you would expect, except for Blue Sky.
Well, good. Thank you for your time and catch up with you more soon.
Thanks for having me. Welcome.